Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? Today I read Captain in Calico by George MacDonald Fraser. Let's get into it. Long week at work, long day at work. Not as long as last week because I didn't quite get to 60 hours, but anyway. This book will pair very well with On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers because it is an historical novel about an actual figure named Calico Jack Rackham. This is a name that I've heard before, and I even borrowed the nickname for the villain in my book Howling Wilderness, Calico Hind. His name was Jameson Hind. He went by Calico for reasons that were relevant to the story. But I didn't know a whole lot about the man other than he was a pirate who was connected romantically, according to the story anyway, to Anne Bonny. And Anne Bonny did feature in Tim Powers' novel. Not heavily, but she was in it. And so I don't know how much this novel skews towards the actual history of Jack Rackham, but it's a great story on its own. And there was a very endearing foreword written by Fraser's children, who manage his estate, I guess. And they found this in his archives and released it in 2015, kind of doing what Sherry Crichton's been doing with Michael Crichton's old works. And so I was like, well, I've heard of George MacDonald Fraser, never read anything by him, and I'm really fascinated with the golden age of piracy, and I heard the name, so altogether I picked it up. Basically, he was a guy who was out doing his piracy bit, and he was convicted of it, and he could get a pardon if he would then kind of feature into a certain governor's, Woodes Rogers, plans. Woodes Rogers was the governor's name, to go and raid another treasure ship on his behalf, put together a crew, etc., etc. But there were some personal and interpersonal dynamics between Calico Jack Rackham. Sorry, my brain is melted. Calico Rackham and Woodes Rogers and Anne Bonny and a girl named Kate Sampson and a few other figures of the time period that all converged together to show the ups and downs of Calico Jack's adventures. If you get pardoned and then you return to the thing that you were pardoned for, a conviction is basically a death sentence. And not only is he leveraged and put under the control of the governor who issues the pardon, he then has to kind of double cross the guy. And I'm being vague because A, it's a short book, and B, it's a really, really good book, and C, I just want you to read it. There's not a whole lot that I can say about it beyond that. I thought that the prose, especially though, was really well done. George MacDonald Fraser is known more for his Flashman novels, and Dave Butler talked about those on a show that he does recently. I was like, oh, I'll check those out. My library didn't have the audiobooks of those, but they had this one, and so I picked this one up to get kind of familiar with Fraser's style. And he's got a very strong and a very artistic voice, very kind of picturesque, and he does it without going on and abusing his word economy. He's very selective with his vocabulary, and he paints a beautiful picture with it. I thought that was really well done, and that made the story easier to follow in a way, and more enjoyable. So I recommend checking that out. For a content warning, there was some mild profanity throughout. Before I read this book, I read a couple of reviews of it. And I always check out, okay, what's a good review and then what's a really butthurt review. And it's always some blue-haired girl. Now that I've said blue-haired girl, you can picture exactly what her BMI is. She was complaining about the aggressive use of the N-word over and over and over again. I was like, well, I doubt it's as bad as pronounced. And lo and behold, I was right. There was one instance of a lady dropping the hard R, and it's because she had been stripped of all of her clothing and locked in a basement with a man of a certain complexion to guard over her, and she was afraid for not just her life but her virtue, we'll say. And when she escaped, she had some very colorful feelings of wanting to kill the guy that threatened her. I'll leave it at that. If you saw my review last year of which Bond book was it? I read Live and Let Die. The villain in that one was like a black crime boss. And this book, being written in the 40s, it used period era common language. And so black guys were Negroes and black women were Negresses. And that was just a descriptive term. Like now we say black guy, black lady. And depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, you'll capitalize the B or not. But back then it was the term. It wasn't necessarily a derogatory term. Like now there are people pushing to make even Negro a derogatory term. It's like, well, don't we still have the United Negro College Fund? It's not the United Other N-word College Fund. Like, aren't there distinctions between these things? I don't know. This is always a moving goalpost. But he used period accurate language, because this was the 1600s, for distinctions between whites and blacks, and these were common words for whites and blacks and what have you. So there were plenty of instances of Negro and Negress, but only one hard R word from a woman who was in peril of something very, very bad and in a state of heightened emotionality, we shall say. There were some sensual scenes and stuff too. It was not overly descriptive about the hardware, but it was also not vague about what was going on. I will say that he found a tasteful way to do it, because there are very tasteless ways to do it. I think about some of the scenes in Pirate Latitudes by Michael Crichton. There's a scene where the governor has relations, and I was like, wow, there are descriptions I could have not had. Anyway, so that stuff is there, but it's handled well for the kind of book that this is. And I thought the ending was really strong. And if this was the kind of book that George MacDonald Fraser himself thought was a poor example of his writing and thought that it was good that it didn't get published and it was this well done, it does make me a little bit more optimistic to eventually try his Flashman series. And that's even with knowing what I know about Flashman series, that Flashman series. He is an outright anti-hero, which is not to say that he's like, oh, he's a bad boy, but he's secretly got a heart of gold. Like, apparently this dude is a bad dude who does bad things for very bad reasons. But the way the novels are written, things just kind of work out for him, and the chips fall in such a way that people will sometimes think that he's a good guy, but this is a dude who kills people and steals stuff and even does some of the rhymes with grape word. And so I'm apprehensive on that particular point. But as to the rest, I've heard that the writing is really, really strong. And after reading the prose and the writing in this one, in Captain in Calico, I'll give the first Flashman novel a try down the road. But anyway, like I said, there were plenty of parts in this book where I kept thinking of On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers, and I need to redo my review of that, because that's another fantastic book. Shoot, I'm probably due to reread it. But anyway, check out Captain in Calico by George MacDonald Fraser, and let me know what you think. Until next time, drive safe. See you out there.